Hey, welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Channel. I'm Darren, and today I have a whole packer brisket here, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to break it down. I'm going to separate the flat and the point so that we can cook these both sous vide, but with different processes. We're going to do different things with them, but this video I'm just going to show you how I trim and break it into a flat and a point. I'll be right back.
Smoking, grilling, getting hot and hotter. Sous vide and chilling from fire and water.
Alright guys, first I just want to tell you what I have here. And if you guys have a Costco near you, I know in Florida and Texas and a lot of other places, Costco does carry full packer briskets. And that's usually the cheaper way you can get them. This one I've actually had for a couple months, and I bought it. It's a prime, USDA prime grade, but I did pay a little bit more than they're selling for right now. I paid about $3.99 a pound. Now I think they're selling for like $2.79 a pound, but they usually have a pretty decent deal on full packer briskets at Costco. So check them out. They do also sell just the flat portion. That's already trimmed up and ready to go, and they usually sell that for more, like $5.99, $6.99 a pound. I stay away from those because I like the point. It's fattier. I can do more things with it, and I usually like to cook the whole packer at the same time together, so I have a little bit of the lean and the fat, and I can get a little bit of mixture when I'm cooking it up. But I know that there's some people that don't like the whole buying the whole packer and trimming off the fat. So maybe just getting the flat itself is for you. However you like to do it, Costco's a great place to do it. But what I'm going to do with this one, it's about 18 pounds, and it does have, some good big thick pieces of fat that we're going to trim off first. This is your fatter side, and it's got some thick pieces on here, and we're going to trim that up, but we're actually going to take it apart. We're going to break it down. So first of all, let me get this out of the cryo pack, get my setup out here, get my knife, my cutting board, and everything else, and then I'll show you how I'm going to break it down. I'll be right back. All right, all. So here I've got it. I'm going to show you here. Do a little close-up for you so you can see just what's going on. Got my brisket here, and I got it the fat side up. There is some fat on the other side, but it's usually a big chunk of fat and some little trimming that I need to do. And this has got most of your fat on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim a lot of this fat off. Since we are going to sous vide it, I really don't need a whole lot of this fat to protect it. We're not cooking it for 12 to 18 hours just in the smoker. So I don't really need a whole lot of the fat cap to protect it from overheating or burning or anything like that. So I'm going to take my really sharp boning knife. First of all, I'm going to move it to my cutting board here. I did pat this all the moisture off of this. So usually when you got a full packer, you're going to have a thinner side here where your flat is, and a thicker side here where your point is. But you're going to have these big thick pockets of fat that need to come off. And then right here, your fat cap is really a lot thicker than it is down here, and you're going to have a lot of this granny skin. That's what they call it. That's kind of more like connective tissue. It kind of just sits right on top of the muscle, and you're just going to want to pull that off. And I'm just going to throw, most of my trimmings are going to go in a bowl, because I can use this fat to maybe mix with some really cheap roasts, like maybe a eye round or top round, something like that, and make some great ground beef from it. You can see this, a big chunk of fat right here. So what I'm going to do, like I said, we are going to separate the point and the flat here, but I am going to try to trim as much of this fat off as I can before I do that. It's okay if you get a little bit of meat on there. I wouldn't worry about it. Like I said, I'm going to be saving most of this for to mix in with some other more lean cuts and make ground beef out of it, so I'm not really worried. And some of this granny skin I'm not, but I'm going to put it in the same bowl, and I'll take it out later. As you can tell, you just don't want to take much of that meat if you can. Just try to get just deep enough where you're getting some of that fat and that connective type tissue. And I'm also going to be able to trim a little bit more of this off once I get the point and the flat separated. So, all right, so I got that side done. I'm going to flip it over. It's starting to get a little slimy because it's been out here for a little while. Get that fat off of there. And as you can tell, like I said, this side doesn't have a whole lot of fat, and most of it, what's on there, is really thin. So you can take your knife and just kind of scrape it. You can even leave a lot of this on. There's some of that granny skin on here, connective tissue. You can kind of trim off if you want to. But I'm going to leave a lot of that on. Any big chunks that I didn't see when I had it on the other side, I'll go ahead and take off as well. Don't be afraid to move around or move your meat around. And this is called the decal right here. And this is a big chunk of fat that's right there at the seam of your where your flat and your point meet. And I'm going to dig deep into this one because that's going to get me into that seam where I can separate the point and the flat here. Like I said, I'll just trim this a little bit. Remember, this is not a competition brisket, so really don't care about looks. Alright, now if you can see the seam right here, this is where your point and your flat meet. And it comes over to the other side as well. You can see right here, it's another part of that. I'm going to actually start by putting my knife right through the seam here. Just kind of running it along inside there to let it start separating, kind of pull it. And you'll be able to tell where the point actually connects. If you just cut, because that fat seam will keep going. Turn it back over here. Starting to get slimy. You can really see here, because this here is your flat 100% on this side, and you can see how the points, the grain of the meat is actually going that way on the point, and on the flat it's going that way. So you can really just start taking it right here in this section. You can really see where they meet, because there's that lump of fat that sits right in between them. You can just start cutting. And just start peeling it off. And you'll meet right up with the other side that you started cutting, and you'll just be able to peel it back. And just run your knife there in the fat, and you'll be able to pull your flat right away from it. And that's it. Then you can come back in here and you see that there's still some of that fat in here. It's that big decal piece of fat. Just cut that right off. Try to leave as much of that meat on there as you can. A lot of this decal fat won't render, so you really want to get that out so it won't really render too much, especially in the sous vide. Now, if you're cooking this in the smoker, this is one of the reasons why you need to really get your meat over the 200 mark, because it will render that fat more in the decal, and that's when you see people squeezing the brisket and the fat kind of oozes out. Well, that's that decal fat. So here's my big flat, all separated from the point. Turn it back over here, and I'll trim off some more of the fat that got exposed. Probably got about 2.5, 3 pounds of fat here. So that 18-pound brisket probably turns into a 7 or 8 pound flat section here, and 3 to 4 pounds of point. I'm going to go ahead and trim a lot of this. This is more of that big, thick decal fat with no meat in it. See? But this is going to make great burn ends. It's really got a lot of intermuscular fat in there, not just this decal. Alright, so about 2.5, 3 pounds of a point here, and it's kind of thin, but a lot of intermuscular fat in here. This is what we're going to make our burn ends. Here's my 7 to 8 pound flat. I'm going to trim this up probably just a little bit here on the thinner side, because it's going to burn up. It's got a little bit more of that fat on there. Another good thing with sous vide and with the brisket is when you do have a thinner flat section like this, a lot of times this will burn up in your smoker when you're cooking it traditionally, just in the smoker. So a lot of pit masters for competition or for restaurants will actually cut a lot of this part off and just go for the thicker part, and they'll take this and they'll toss it in a bucket and they'll make sausage out of it. So when they're trimming up, you see competitors and like Aaron Franklin trimming up their brisket for a restaurant or competition, they use a lot of that meat that they trim off and use it for sausage. So especially when they're cooking the higher quality, Wagyu briskets that cost, $200 a piece, they're using that meat. So there you have it, guys. We got a flat ready to go. We got our point ready to go. There's still a little bit of fat on here. Like I said, you don't have to go too crazy. It all depends on what you guys want. But I am going to cut a good amount of this off, just because it won't render too much in the sous vide. There you go. That's how you separate a flat and a point on an 18+ pound brisket. Not a pretty sight. It's not a competition brisket for sure. So really easy to do, and like I said, It really is up to you how much fat you remove and how much you don't. If you were cooking this on the cooker, it's just on a smoker, you'd leave a lot more fat on it than I would. But thanks for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, follow the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast, and I'll see you on the next Fire and Water Cooking video. Let me get this ready to go.